and CEO of the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. Thank you to the Red Deer Chamber of Commerce for inviting me back down to moderate this forum. Either they enjoyed my bubbly personality from the Alberta election forum, or perhaps it's the fact that I don't charge for moderating things. Well, I think it's the first reason. So we're going to go through some of the orders or the rules for tonight. Again, it gives me great pleasure to be the moderator this evening. The Red Deer and District Chamber of Commerce is presenting this evening's programs. This program will give registered candidates contesting the position for the office of Member of Parliament the opportunity to present their political platforms on issues relating to the federal government. As moderator, I'll be keeping a close eye on the content of the candidate presentations and will not accept any comments or questions from the floor of a personal nature that may place any candidate or questioner in jeopardy. I refer to specifically to comments relating to the personal history of any candidate. Questions or comments that I deem to be a personal attack on a candidate will be ruled unacceptable. I'll interrupt the presenter if this happens. We're here to give all candidates the opportunity to express their views on federal issues and to give everyone a fair chance to be heard. All presentations will receive specified time warnings with a warning signal from me when the candidate is running close to the end of his or her time. It's about fairness. So the rules of order are the candidates will each be given 4 minutes for opening. They've pre-drawn for the order of speaking to that. They will be given 1 minute to answer a question, any questions from the floor. We will also hold questioners to that time limit. Ask your question, keep your individual comments slim, but get to your point quickly so that we can get through a number of questions. At the end of the full discussion, we will have a 1 minute time period for each candidate to sum up their presentation at the end of the evening, and we will go in reverse order for that. So we'll get it going right away. The first candidate to speak this evening is Jeff Rock, representing the Liberal Party.
Good evening, folks. Bonsoir et toutes et tous. It's an honor and a pleasure to see you all here and to see that more folks are trickling in, and hopefully we can get this place packed before the end of the evening. Before I begin, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that currently, since we're on the south side of the Red Deer River, we're on Treaty 7 territory, and the riding of Red Deer Lacombe, where I'm the Liberal candidate, is primarily made up of Treaty 6 territory, and I think that's something just to acknowledge at the beginning. Just with these a few minutes, I just want to give you folks a bit of an introduction about who I am and a little bit of my personal history. So I was born in Northern Ontario in the city of Sudbury, which is pretty similar to Red Deer. It's a resource-based economy. And when I was 18 years old, I moved away to Montreal and did a Bachelor's of Science in Microbiology and Immunology, and then a Master's Divinity, both of those at McGill University in Montreal. And then 6 years ago, I, like many of you or your ancestors, came to this province of Alberta with a lot of hope, very little change in my pockets, and the hope of tapping into part of what we call the Alberta Advantage and the entrepreneurial spirit of this great province. I've had an opportunity to get very involved, especially in the community here at Red Deer, through lots of different volunteer organizations, opportunities, sitting on a City of Red Deer Council committee, the Downtown Redevelopment Action Plan Committee, being chair of the board of a local nonprofit agency, and volunteering at places like the Soup Kitchen and Loaves and Fishes in the Red Deer Regional Hospital. But that's just a quick snapshot of who I am. But more important than who I am is why I decided to step up and run for politics. Because this election is about more than just me, or Justin Trudeau, or Stephen Harper. This is a momentous election where we're all gathered together with hope for our shared future, that we can make a bigger and better country than we already have. And we'll share that shared future only if we come together. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which political party you vote for. Well, it does, of course. But at the end of the election, we will all be Canadians. We all wear the Team Canada jersey, and we all need to come together and build constructive solutions for our shared future. I decided to step up and run for politics because I've seen our country become more and more divisive, our politics become more and more polarized, East versus West, Indigenous versus immigrant versus old stock Canadian. I've seen the exacerbation of income inequality can no longer deny climate change, nor can we ignore the importance of the resource-based economy on us right here in Central Alberta. We can't pretend the economy and the environment are mortal enemies. Rather, we need to hold them together and get the balance right. If you look at the Keystone XL pipeline, just as one example, it's being denied, it's being vetoed by the President of the United States because Canada has become a laggard on the world stage when it comes to the environment. To get our oil and gas to market, in this day and age, we must work together and have a coordinated national approach to dealing with the challenge of carbon emissions. Much like Alberta's oil and gas industry helps benefit the entire country's economy, we need the entire country's help to meet the environmental challenges that are coming forward to us, get pipelines built, and get our product to market. What makes Canada such a great country from coast to coast to coast is that we are true, north, strong, and free, not in spite of our differences, but because of them. Thank you very much.
I told the candidates I was going to be brutal as far as time cut off. Next up, Harris with the NDP. Paul.
Nothing's worse than a short mic. Thank you all for coming, and I'm just absolutely delighted to be here to give a short address and give you a chance to get to know who I am as your candidate in Red Deer Mountain View. For those of you that don't know, I've been on City Council in Red Deer for 5 years. I was elected in 2010 and then again in 2013, and have served on numerous committees there. I've worked with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities right across the country, advocating for important things like environment, the economy, women in politics, social programs, a number of things that affect municipalities, and particularly infrastructure. And we've been working with municipalities, small and large, right across Canada. I have 25 years of business experience, and many of you will have seen me in Sunworks downtown and maybe had coffee at the Coconut Room, and know that I've been in business for a long time. My first business was when I was 12, actually. Yes, I know, it's amazing. 50 years ago, it feels like. And then my first professional job was actually in oil and gas, working with Trans-Canada Pipelines. My education right now is in relational leading, and particularly in collaborative governance. And I've actually been asked to co-author a book on collaborative governance, and I'm quite excited about that. As I go door to door in the last little while, there are a number of issues that come up. I want to just start by telling you that NDP is not anti-oil. Remember nothing else tonight, remember that much. But we are pro-diversification in this economy. And if you've been in Alberta as long as I have, and many of you have been, you will have been through the boom and bust cycles of this economy for many years. And each time this happens, we promise ourselves that we'll never let all this money go, and we'll actually do something with it so that the next time it comes, we're in a better place. But what do? We forget that it happens. And so we need to find ways to diversify this economy, and that means that we've got to work with all orders of government to do that. Here's a couple of examples. I feel quite passionate about the Red Deer Regional Airport. We're trying to extend the runway on the Red Deer Regional Airport. It's really important that that happens. Red Deer and this community around us is within 2 hours drive to 80% of Albertans. This means that that airport could be a logistics hub for distribution of services, and it's of course going to provide aviation jobs, and there's all of that part that goes with it, and construction jobs as well. And then of course there's the duty maintenance and all the things that would come out of the opportunity to have that airport expanded. I'm very passionate that that happens, and I'll work to make sure that it does. As you know, also, I've been passionate about the Red Deer College becoming a polytechnic university. Again, these are opportunities for our students here, for affordable housing, for long-term education. Students could have their education experience here, stay here in our city, and continue to help build the economy. Thank you so much. And these are just a few of the ideas. We have to also support our agricultural programs here, and you know that a lot of the family farms are struggling right now. We've got a manufacturing sector that we need to pay attention to. Tourism is important to Central Alberta, as are many other industries. What we've got to find a way to do is diversify the economy in such a way that when one sector suffers, that the other ones can pick up and carry us along. you, as your MP would be to consult with you and to make sure that I really and clearly understand your voice as I go to Ottawa. I want to make sure that we have roundtables, that we have coffee houses, that we have an opportunity to get to know one another. We need a strong voice in Ottawa that represents Alberta. We don't need an Ottawa voice in Alberta. It's the other way around. So I hope that you will, thank you.
I think he gets points for politeness to the moderator. Next up we have Chandra. And Chandra is representing the Liberal Party.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Red Deer Chamber of Commerce for organizing this event, and thank you to everyone who took time out of their evening to attend tonight. My name is Chandra Kastern. I'm the Liberal Party candidate for Red Deer Mountain View. My colleagues have already acknowledged what territory we're on, and so thank you for being mindful of that. I live in Red Deer with my 11-year-old son in our chocolate lab. I work 2 jobs. I'm a massage therapist, and I'm the executive director of the Red Deer Symphony Orchestra. When I moved to Alberta 10 years ago, it wasn't long before I realized that my profession, massage therapy, needed to change. I was challenged to bring this change about, so I did. I worked collaboratively in developing education, examination, and competency standards both provincially and nationally. This work continues to facilitate full labor mobility, and better, safer care for Albertans. I understand advocacy, negotiation, and consensus building. I was instrumental in gaining permission for massage therapy to become regulated under the Health Professions Act in Alberta. As a result, I know how the legislative process works. I have the skills to build policy, regulations, and standards. I can examine issues from all angles, bring people together, and be the voice for real change. I did this as a volunteer, a spokesperson, an advocate, a mother, a teacher, a therapist, an administrator, and a mentor. I'm no stranger to standing up for what I believe in, even if it means standing alone. I mean, really, I'm a single mom running as a Liberal in central Alberta. Throughout this journey, I realized that I love causes, and I'm here today because I love causes and I love Canada. To me, working on making this an even better place to live is the best possible cause. I chose to run with the Liberal Party because I'm convinced that this is the party that represents what I'm all about, a realistic plan for growth, and what I consider myself to be, an ordinary, hardworking Canadian with a family to support. The Alberta government has leveled with us in saying that, this is right in my eye, saying that we will be running a substantial deficit until 2019 at least. It makes absolutely no sense to me that Alberta, the stated backbone of the Canadian economy, would be in a recession, and yet on a federal level we have promises of a balanced budget next year. We should all be asking at what cost. Let's be real, we are in a recession, we are losing jobs, and we have to face this challenge head on. Interest is at a historic low, and this isn't the time to be making cuts. This is the time to be investing into our country. Now is the time to grow our economy, create jobs, and long-lasting infrastructure for our future generations to enjoy. Right now, in Red Deer and region, we're facing the highest unemployment rate in the province, well above the national average. I'm willing to bet that just about everyone in this room knows at least one person who's lost their job recently. I'm asking you to elect me so that we can improve employment insurance programs, invest in a renewed youth employment strategy, and provide accessible funding for skills development and retraining. I'm asking you to elect me so that we can begin meaningfully reinvesting in our social programming and our infrastructure. We all want to know that we have a roof over our heads, our seniors aren't living in poverty, our veterans are not neglected, our children are well taken care of, and that our healthcare system can handle the challenges it's facing already and the challenges it's going to face as we age at a disproportionate rate to what we are right now. I'm asking you to elect me so that I, an ordinary, hardworking Canadian with a family to support, that's really intimidating, may have the honor of representing each of you hardworking Central Albertans in our riding. I want the chance to make a difference as your member of Parliament. I'm happy to be here, and I'm really excited to hear your ideas about what it's going to take to bring real change to Ottawa and back to Red Deer Mountain View. Thank you.
Really, I'm a nice guy. Just ask my grandkids.
husband, dad, grandfather. My wife Ina is gave me the inspiration for my speech tonight. And it's called, "The Canada Today is Not the Canada I Remember." I remember being proud of our UN peacekeepers in the Congo and Syria and Israel and Cyprus. I remember the pride I felt when we developed our own flag and a sense of patriotism. I remember how proud I was of our Prime Minister and his peacekeeping role in the Suez Canal. We shared, we cooperated, we looked out for one another, we were optimistic and hopeful. And most of all, I remember thinking, Canada is the best country in the world, and I had confidence in democracy. But today is not the Canada I remember. We seem to care more about large corporations and the trickle-down economy than we do about our citizens. And I might offer the Trans-Pacific Partnership as an example of that. Government invades our privacy, infringes on our freedoms. Instead of debating policy in Parliament, we prorogue Parliament, and we make decisions behind closed doors. We abandon our producers. We jeopardize the health of our citizens in favor of satisfying trading partners. We find issues to divide us and not causes to unite us. And rather than create a long-term economic plan that diversifies the economy, that protects the environment, and researches renewable energy production, we continue to strip and ship fossil fuels to other countries. Rather than finding ways to create jobs in value-added manufacturing and refinement of our resources, we ship jobs abroad. And our government manages with the politics of fear, polarizing Canadians, rather than promoting dialogue and long-term problem solving. The New Democrats want to move Canada in the direction of sharing and cooperation, and fostering a healthy environment for businesses to thrive and prosper, for young people to work, raise their children, plan for post-secondary education, to generate well-paid, secure jobs that lead to secure retirement. Our federal government needs to talk to the provinces. The federal government funds many of the programs that provinces deliver. But in the 10 years that the Conservatives have made up government, there have only been 2 First Ministers' conferences, and they've both been on the economy. None have been on health. None have been on seniors' care, pharmacare, child care, or affordable housing. How can we make plans for program delivery when provinces that deliver the programs are not at the table? We want to replace competition with cooperation, hate with hope, and the politics of fear with the politics of fair. My name is Doug Hart. On October the 19th, I look for your support. Thank you.
He gets points for coming in well under the limit. Next up is Earl Dreeshen, representing the Conservative Party.
Thank you very much, Ken, and I'm certainly proud to be here representing the Conservative Party of Canada and for the Red Deer Mountain View riding. And first of all, I would like to thank the Chamber and all of the organizers for the great work that you've done helping connect voters to candidates. My life experience as a farmer, as a high school math and science teacher, and as a coach and volunteer has helped shape my values of hard work and community service. These values have helped me in so many ways in my role as the Member of Parliament for Red Deer since 2008. I listen and I work hard for you, my constituents. Having served the inspiring people of the Red Deer riding for the last 7 years, I would be honored to once again serve our Central Alberta region as the federal representative in the newly formed Red Deer Mountain View riding. There have been 3 main themes that I've heard over and over again during this campaign. The importance of a strong economy to create jobs and economic growth, helping families with children by enhancing the universal child care benefit and to keep taxes low, and the recognition of the need for strong leadership both at home and on the world stage. Over the years, Canada's economic engine, Alberta, has been unjustly demonized by the opposition media, as Albertans All we expect when we go to work is balance. Our economic foundation was built on strong environmental stewardship, whether it's oil and gas, agriculture, or manufacturing. Albertans respect the rules that are in place and deservedly so, feel that hard work and honest effort should be rewarded. Now, some from the NDP have said during this campaign that the NDP is not anti-oil. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's be perfectly clear. The actions of the NDP speak louder than the words. Now, our Conservative government, no matter which province we're in, believes that a low-tax environment helps job creators reinvest and expand their businesses. This has helped propel Canada to the best job creation rate in the G7 and economic growth for 7 straight years. This economic growth has generated enough wealth to achieve a budget surplus last year, and only Conservatives have committed to balanced budgets without raising taxes or running deficits in the years to come. We have achieved all of this while delivering the largest transfer to our municipal and provincial partners in infrastructure, healthcare, and social programs. Federal infrastructure investments in Alberta are now 5 times greater than when the Liberals were in power. Federal healthcare transfers under the Liberals were cut by 30% to balance the budget. And I know because I was a hospital board chairman at the time. Under our Conservative government, health transfers to the provinces have gone up 70%. Here in Alberta, an extra $1 billion has been added to correct the unfair agreement signed in 2004. Our belief that families are best suited to address their personal priorities is what's motivated us to cut personal taxes across the board and to increase family benefits. This means that as a Canadian, you have more money in your pocket so that you can spend your money on your priorities. In a world beset with many complex issues, we are so fortunate to be Canadians. Recently, Prime Minister Harper was awarded the World Statesman of the Year Award for championing human rights, democracy, It's been a privilege to serve my community and my country, and I'd be honored to once again have you place your trust in me on October 19th. Thank you.
And last but not least, to make opening statements, Calkins, Conservative.
Thank you very much, Ken. My name is Blaine Calkins. I'm honored and thrilled to be here to address you fine folks here in Red Deer today. I've been the Member of Parliament for Wetaskiwin for the last 10 years, and with boundary change coming up, I'm getting to know all of the fine folks in Red Deer, particularly in the north end of Red Deer. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what got me involved. First of all, I'll let you know a little bit about who I am. I was born in Lacombe. I grew up on a family farm north of town. Graduated from Lacombe Composite High School. Since graduated from both the University of Alberta, Red Deer College, and Lethbridge Community College. I have a degree in zoology, and I have credentials in criminology and in computing science as well. I worked for a number of years as a national park warden, as a fisheries technician with Alberta Fish and Wildlife, and as a conservation officer for the province of Alberta. In the wintertime, I would work on rigs, both service rigs and drilling rigs. I worked for Rolling Oilfield, TriMet Well Servicing, North Star Directional Drilling, and so on. After that part of my life was over, I was very, very pleased to have an opportunity to become a database administrator and systems analyst for Agriculture Financial Services in Lacombe. That was my first office job. And then since then, I was asked to go back to Red Deer College, and I taught there for 5 years prior to being elected in 2006 to the riding of Wetaskiwin. I was also elected on town council in Lacombe, and I've been very active in my community and various boards and various organizations over the years. What motivated me to get involved in politics was the fact that back in about 2005, my wife and I, 3 small kids at the time, ages 7, 5, and 3, and we were struggling to make ends meet as a family. We made the personal choice that one person would stay at home to raise the family because we thought that the most important job that we had to do as a family was raising our children the right way, the way that we saw fit for ourselves. And I was discouraged at the time to hear that others wanted to take more of my hard-earned money and spend it on programs like childcare and daycare that weren't going to benefit my family at all. So I got involved. I got involved in politics. And I was so glad over the last 10 years that we put forward such positive policies for family, ending the marriage penalty. was ridiculous back in 2005 that a stay-at-home parent's personal exemption amount was considered less valuable than somebody who's out of the workforce, as if somehow staying at home and raising a family isn't important. And since then, we've done amazing things for families, allowing them to keep more of their hard-earned money. In fact, a family today keeps almost 60, with the benefits package that we've put in for the last 10 years, gets to keep about $6,000 more of their hard-earned money to pay for things that are important to those families, seniors through pension splitting, and other changes that we've made in the withdrawal of RSPs and the movement to pension plans, moving their money around tax-free savings account. We've taken 400,000 seniors off the tax rolls altogether. We've empowered Canadian families and seniors to take care of themselves. We've grown our economy almost to the point, well, we've grown our economy almost double when it comes to our per capita GDP. That means that our domestic product, the output of our nation, is so much larger. We produce taxes across the board, but tax revenues have gone up. 1.3 million net new jobs since the end of the recession. We have more money now in the Government of Canada's coffers to deal with programs and services, like my colleague Earl had mentioned, healthcare, education, infrastructure, record investments for Canadians, improving the quality of life for all of us. I'm really proud to be a member of Stephen Harper's team. He has done a brilliant job on the international stage, and the exciting news coming forward of another market diversification for our country is only going to allow us to do the things that we do best, grow and prosper as a nation. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
I'd like you to join me in thanking the candidates for sticking with me. We have 2 mics in the center of the auditorium here. If you want to come down and ask a question, please come on down. I'll rotate back and forth between microphones. Looks like we have somebody approaching the mic right now. Go ahead.
Good evening.
It is.
Thanks for all the, thank you candidates for showing up and putting your name forward. As a voter, I really appreciate that. I would love to hear from each and every one of you what you like and what you do not like about the new TPP agreement.
Got a brief question. Thank you. I'm going to start off, first of all, with chuckle it up here. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Blaine, first of all.
Okay, Ken, this is on good. So what I really like about the TPP and the announcement that happened today is that if this is ratified and concluded, Canada will now have access to over 60% of the world's GDP, 800 million new customers. We have great products and services in Canada. We have one of the most talented workforces, one of the best groups of entrepreneurs in the world. We're at the leading edge when it comes to science and technology and development. What we need is access, market access. One of the things that frustrated me most before was the fact that growing up on a farm, we couldn't even sell our wheat and barley to whoever we wanted to. We were obligated under the Canadian Wheat Board to sell to the Canadian Wheat Board. We see now that agricultural products are at record highs when it comes to beef prices, pork prices. Grain and oilseed prices are leaving to these markets as quickly as they're coming off the field these days. Our infrastructure is struggling to keep up with the opportunities. So I see it as a positive thing.
Okay, next up, why don't we go to Earl?
Thank you very much for the question. It certainly is something that I was very excited about. Had an opportunity to talk to many people about TPP. I've talked to many people that are involved with supply management. We had promised them that we were going to make them whole, and that was the case. If you listen to the Dairy Farmers of Canada, one of the quotes they had this morning, no negative impact to supply management preserved for the next generation. And that's on one side. And the other side is opening up the opportunities for so many other commodities. From the president of the wheat growers, the vast majority of Canadian agriculture depends on access to export markets, and there's more to it. But the point is these opportunities to be able to take our fantastic products and sell them in other parts of the world is something we can be extremely proud of.
Doug, over to you.
There are a lot of contrary views on the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel-winning economist, says It'll jeopardize the safety of products coming into the country because other countries use hormones, growth hormones, bovine hormones, dairy hormones that are outlawed in Canada. The patent protection for pharmaceutical companies, it was bad enough at 20 years. The Conservatives extended it from 7 to 20. Now it's unlimited, and you've heard where patents are being bought and sold. Drugs that used to cost like $12 are now costing $700 overnight. The supply management has been protected by the Canadian taxpayers promising to pay $40 billion over the next 10 years to offset the damage done to auto parts industries and dairy industries. And
Time.
I have more.
No, you don't. You can make that more. Chandra, over to you.
Or Chandra.
Chandra, I'm sorry.
That's okay, it happens all the time. I'm going to make a YouTube video one day. So what do I have to say about the TPP? The first thing is that the Liberal Party is pro-trade, so I can't really comment or criticize for the adoption of this particular agreement. That being said, I'd love to comment specifically to it, but I, as a Canadian citizen, don't know much about it because it has not been made public. And so in the next couple of days, it's my understanding that the entirety of the agreement will be released for us to review. At such a time, I would be able to comment further on the specifics. Other than that, I'm sure that we can all read the news about what the TPP is. I think approaching things like that with a balanced approach in terms of creating jobs in Canada and exporting our goods in an efficient manner is the point of a trade agreement. And so hopefully that's what this has done for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you very much for the question. I'll be brief. For me, the lack of consultation with the sectors, I think, is the thing that I dislike about it the most. I think it's very important that we always consult the public and consult the sectors involved before we get into these kind of trade agreements. It may or may not be a good thing, parts of it, but since we haven't seen it, we don't know. And this, to me, is the transparency that is lacked by the current government, and I think it speaks to that very clearly. I'm concerned about our local companies having the ability to bid on local government jobs without being sued by private companies abroad. I'm concerned about the effect it will have on dairy farms, on agriculture in general, on the auto industry, and on the pharmacy companies. So those are my concerns, and I hope that there are some good things in there. I'm sure there are. Most things we work out could have good influence as well, but until we see it, I don't think we can really say what the good things are yet.
Okay. And last word on this question to Jeff.
So 10 years ago, the Conservative Party came to power based on one major promise, and that was transparency. And what we've seen with the TPP is just another example in a long list of completely untransparent negotiations on our behalf. This government has been the least transparent in history, muzzling scientists, denying media access to the parliamentary process, and it goes the same with the TPP. I have a lot of cluelessness because I haven't had time to find and read it when it's been released at the last minute, 2 weeks to the day before an election campaign. I'm deeply concerned about the concessions that are made. The Liberal Party is in favor of trade, but not at the expense of Canadian people and Canadian jobs. And income inequality has become a problem in our country increasingly in the last 30 years, specifically because of the free trade agreements we've signed in the past. And I'm deeply concerned that the TPP will only exacerbate that, make the ultra-rich richer, and ship Canadian middle-class jobs abroad. So I'm deeply looking forward to not only reading more information about the TPP as it's released, but being a member of Parliament negotiations.
This microphone down here. I think I recognize this guy.
Yeah, you probably do. First off, the TPP, none of the parties involved their publics in consultation, including the Obama administration, who got fast-track authority not to have public discussions, so it's a bit cheeky to say that we should. I'm going to quote, and this is directed mostly at Liberals candidates here, but I'm going to quote from your leader, and you can respond as to whether you agree with him or don't. And if you don't, I'd like to know why you're a member of the party. But 4 years ago, he said, quote, Canada isn't doing well right now because it's Albertans who control our community and social democratic agenda. It doesn't work, unquote. When asked whether he thought Canada was, quote, better served when there are more Quebecers in charge in Quebec, Trudeau replied, quote, I'm liberal, so of course I think so, yes. Certainly when we look at the great prime ministers of the 20th century, those have really stood the test of time were MPs from Quebec. So my question to you is, do you support your leader's opinion of Albertans? And if you don't, why do you support him?
Okay. What I'm going to do, since that was directed to the two Liberal candidates, I will go to the two Liberal candidates. Then I will ask the other folks up on the stage whether they wish to answer or rebut that comment. And we're going to go, first of all, to Jeff. I'm going to cut out of order.
So the first thing I'm going to say, since you made a comment about the TPP that wasn't a question, I'm going to go out on a limb, seeing as you were defending the Conservatives, that that's a bit of a planted question. So what I will tell you is I'm tired of these politics of division that set Quebec against Alberta. Things like opening up the Constitution, exacerbating our country. We are Canada, a great country from coast to coast to coast. And I disagree with you. We have to sit down and take the bit of politics and come together and build a better future as a united country. We are not against people in Quebec. We are a united country. We are Canadians who are proud of the diversity of this country. Whether you speak French or English or Newfoundlandese, you have a role to play in our great country. And so I hope we can come together and get beyond those divisive kinds of comments and the politics of fake outrage and slander and bringing up things from people's pasts.
Chandra.
You got it. It's a tough tirade to follow. I'm actually going to ask the gentleman that came up to just come up and tell me that first part of the quote again. No, I can't? Okay. Well, my understanding of it was that Mr. Trudeau definitely threw the Albertans under the bus in terms of the country taking the lead from Alberta. And I'm going to say two things. I'm going to say, number one, I think that we can all agree that quotes and sound bites often get taken out of context. And then secondarily, I challenge you as an Albertan to take a look at the state of our province right now and think about that 4 years ago and where we are right now. And I don't know that I disagree with Mr. Trudeau's standpoint. I think that as Albertans, we stood up this spring and said that we can do better, and we elected a different government as a result. And I think that that quote is definitely foretelling of what was coming down in our country and how dependent we become on the economy.
Anybody on this side of the table want to answer? No? On this side? Go ahead.
It's unfortunate, I think, when people take bites and try to make an issue of them. Mr. Trudeau may have said something that enraged Albertans, but I'm also reminded that a former premier of Alberta referred to Eastern Canadians as bums and creeps, so it seems to work both ways. There's a certain proportion of seats in the parliament that come from Quebec and a certain portion come from PEI, and some people argue about those proportions, but that's the way it is. The beauty of Canada is we have many cultures, we need to embrace them all.
Thanks, Ken. I'm just going to respond this way to the questioner. I'm very, very proud to be a member of Stephen Harper's caucus and Stephen Harper's team. I don't find myself in a situation where I'm defending embarrassing comments. I don't find myself in a situation where I'm defending somebody who changes his mind at any stage. I'm not being a member of the caucus. I'm conscious of my constituents on various issues. I'm glad to be a member of a party that lets me run, regardless of what those views happen to actually be. And if we're like I say, I'm very, very proud to be a member of that particular team that allows me that freedom to act on your behalf as a member of Parliament.
It tells me that there is one rule that I missed to mention. When you ask a question, please state your name. Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Lorna Watkins in Finmer, and I have a question for the South End. That's where I am. It seems that Stephen Harper and many of his running mates have resorted to the lowest common
some of the other political parties work. The NDP have 100% voting record in mass, so they don't ever change their mind. They do not vote for the constituents. The Liberals are at about 92%, and the Conservative Party is in the 80s for voting together on certain items. And yet we are the ones that are able to work through ministerial caucus advisory committees to talk about all of the different things that are required for upcoming thoughts on legislation. These are things that we get to do by a Prime Minister that is open, that wants our commitment. The rest of the story is coming from the media and the opposition, because you have one fantastic Prime Minister.
Doug, your turn. Oh, sorry. I get this in order, so I don't.
That's okay. Paul, the other Doug.
Paul, the other Doug. My other brother, Darryl.
Thank you very much for that question. I heard the question as what would I do, not what would the Prime Minister do. And so I'm going to answer it from that perspective. My work in collaborative governance and relational leadership means that each of us has a relationship with one another in this room, and that each of us has wisdom that we can use to build our country. My goal would be to know you better, to be able to understand your perspectives, whether they're different than mine or the same as mine, so that I can represent you the best way possible when we get to Ottawa. That's how I think we need to do it. There's a variety of ways we can do it, but collaborating with you has got to be front and center in our new government structure, whatever that looks like in the next term.
Chandra.
Really great question, Lorna. And I too am going to echo that I heard you ask me what I would do. And so I'm going to point out that a large part of our platform is about restoring an open and transparent government that is accountable to the people that it serves. I think that will go a long way towards starting to heal the wound and the fraction between our government, not the Harper government, our government, and its people. In terms of how I would go about doing that, it would be certainly consultation with the community. As a resident of Red Deer South, I don't think I recall a single one of those occurring in my riding that I was aware of, and I do read the newspaper and follow social media quite closely. And so I think consulting with my community is huge, but also holding my party accountable. So if they tell me that they're going to do certain things when we get elected, they're going to be doing those certain things when we get elected, and that's part of my buy-in as a candidate, and I think that'll go a long way to delivering on what people elect me for. Thanks.
Doug.
In Sylvan Lake, I admitted that it took the party 6 weeks to approve my candidacy because I had trouble agreeing that I would always vote the party line, because I don't think that way. I think I would do what's in the best interest of people, given evidence-based research, some consultation with constituents. People often ask me who my heroes are, and on top of Stephen Lewis and Tommy Douglas and others, David Kilgore was a hero to me. He got kicked out of the Conservative caucus and he got kicked out of the Liberal caucus. He never came to our caucus, so we didn't have a chance to kick him out. But he did it because he stood on his principles and voted the way he thought his constituents wanted, and that makes him a hero to me.
Sure. The Prime Minister's office has been growing in power with each successive government for the last 30 years, and that concentration of power in the Prime Minister started with a man by the name of Pierre Elliott Trudeau. He was the first one to really start taking the power away from the people and concentrating it in that Prime Minister's office. I think it's, in the way Alanis Morissette calls it, a little bit ironic that it'll be his son, Justin Trudeau, who will return the power to the people by limiting the power of the Prime Minister's office, making sure members of Parliament are able to do their job, make sure that we have a question period that works, that freedom of information requests will happen, that democratic reform in both the Senate and in the way we elect our members of Parliament will happen in a transparent way with all Canadians consulting without having to open up the Constitution. The reason I stepped up to run a year and a half ago was, yes, of course, hoping to be a member of Parliament, but at that time it was considered an even longer shot for a Liberal to be elected in Red Deer Lacombe than it is now. But I committed to engaging as many people as I can. So I responded to every email I've gotten.
Time.
Blaine?
Thank you very much, Ken. Thanks, Martin, for the question. Look, I'm very, very pleased to be up here today to remind you that in the last 3 elections, when the Conservative Party formed government, virtually every promise and commitment that we've made in all of those campaigns has been kept. This is an amazing Peter Harper says what he's going to do, and when he gets elected, he sets about and does it. We've got a great record of cooperation in Parliament. There are many times that I can point out where parties come together and work in the best interest of the country. This is very, very encouraging. I don't understand what the Harper derangement syndrome is all about, because I can tell you straight up that there is cooperation, and I'll go back to Earl's comments earlier. In cases where Conservatives do not vote the party line, it's usually when we're voting along with a Liberal motion or bill or an NDP motion or bill that's in the best interest of Canada. And when a Conservative brings forward a private member's bill, like Michael Chong did, a parliamentary reform bill, where
Time.
That mic.
Hi, my name is Josh. Open question to everyone, I suppose. I should preface what I'm about to say by saying I am not a farmer. I do not have green thumb, but I really enjoy food. So, as far as farmland goes, there's been a lot of conversation about that. I feel like that's, of course, a mainstay of Canadian economy. But currently, land price in Alberta is more expensive than potential production. How does anyone plan to mitigate that sort of issue? And more importantly, I don't hear any conversation around the promotion of new farmers, especially non-monoculture, local crops, things that are not genetically modified or sprayed all over the place with who knows what.
Okay, thank you. We'll start off with Doug first.
A quote I heard at a National Farmers Union, incidentally I should tell you that I am the male co-chair of the Alberta NDP Rural Caucus, so I have some connection. I don't farm, I'm a nurse. Anyway, it's unfortunate that the family farm is not dying in Alberta. It's being killed, and it's being killed by the multinational corporate agenda. And we're getting to be so big, and young people can't afford it. You'll be happy to know that in our platform, and it's on our website, that we have innovative startup activities for young farmers in the prairies. So you'll be happy to know that's in our platform, and you can go to our website and download it.
Chandra?
That was a really good question, and I'm going to speak from my own standpoint in terms of local food security. I am all about growing all of our food as much as we can and what makes sense to grow in central Alberta and keeping it here. I think when you look at the Liberal Party platform, there are a number of things that speak to A, affordable housing, B, tax breaks for those of us that are not the wealthiest 1%, in order to make things like farming your family farm that much more attainable. It doesn't make sense to me that if I can grow a potato in my backyard, that I should be bringing it in from anywhere else. And so, for myself, if elected, I think that my support for that movement towards urban gardening and or local farming in our riding will be huge for me. Thanks.
Paul?
Thank you very much. And I like this question a lot. If you look on the back of my brochure, you'll see actually an endorsement from a local sustainable farmer, because he believes that we should have local sustainable farms in our community, as do I. Family farms are disappearing all across the country, and that's an issue. But we've also noticed at the same time there's been a rise in sustainable farming, smaller farms. And so there's got to be some mechanism for us to incent or to help those farms develop. And this is one of those diversification strategies that I mentioned in my opening talk, and I actually had other pieces I had to cut out. But I think if we did some of those strategies, we could incent some of this development and would really help our economy.
Jeff?
Sure. Again, another great question. I know in my own personal life, I have my own personal farmer, Mike, who I get a Alaska from once a week all summer with all kinds of delights, and I get to try new things like kohlrabi, which I'd never had before. I come from an agricultural background. My maternal side were farmers on a little island off of a big island called Manitoulin Island in the middle of Lake Huron. And there used to be about 100 families there and 100 farms. Now really there's one, maybe two, because those farms have become either go big or go home. And what we know of rural life in Canada is deeply suffering. What I love about the Liberal Party and our platform is we identify a problem and we create a government program to make a solution. We're intentionally interceding in the market to make things right for Canadian people. When you look at what's happened to the wheat board, where it's been deregulated so that a multinational conglomerate, G3, that's the United States and Saudi Arabia, takes over our wheat out of the control of the own farmers who are growing it, we have a big problem.
Blaine.
Thanks, Ken. Josh, great question. I grew up on a family farm. The family farm is still there, and for me, it's all about choice. Now, some people in agriculture choose to go big. They choose to make their money on volume, not on margin. Others have the opportunity to do niche farming or grow products that they sell at the farm gate, that they sell at the farmer's market. The farm that I grew up on actually does both. So what I want to do is provide as much choice as possible. If you want to eat certain foods organic, you want to have choice when it comes to having hormone-free and so on, that's fine. There is somebody in the marketplace that's going to provide that opportunity for you to purchase that product because it makes good business sense for them on a smaller farm if that's the choice that they make. We also have people who want to make their money doing large-scale agriculture, and that's fine. They should have the opportunity to do that as well. Canada is going to be one of the few countries in the world that's going to be a net exporter of food, and we have to make sure that our food system is safe and provides as much food as we can, not only for the domestic market, but for the international market. We have a responsibility to feed the world as well.
Well, thank you. And as the only farmer on the panel, at least at the present time, I remember in 1970 when I first bought my first half section of land, that it was also said at that time, well, you'll never make it with what you paid for it. Nor would they, if I had bought the quarter next to me when I thought that was too much, which is now half of what we paid for the last quarter that we had. It's important, but the family farm is still strong. And what was done with the Canadian Wheat Board to give young people opportunities so that they would be able to sell the product that they grow, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they have to invest, and then to be able to get from there has been the best thing possible. I've also been involved in farmers in this country. We should be so pleased.
Microphone.
My name is Blaine. Many people have say that democracy is being undermined in recent years. What are examples of how you and your leader would return us to a more democratic system?
First up on this one is Chandra.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. In terms of what myself and or my party will do to start implementing some democratic reform, first is reforming the Senate, not abolishing it, but reforming the Senate. The next would be to take a look at things like proportional representation. Have their voice be heard in Ottawa. I think that the third, and particular to our riding, is looking at what kind of voice does our rural contingency really have. I know myself in preparing to campaign, or was told by predictive modeling that I needed to focus on Red Deer, even though half of my riding is in the rural community. And so what does that say about our democratic system? That's all I'm going to say for now. Thanks.
Paul.
Thank you very much. This is very personal to me because I work in my zeitgeist, my way of thinking is around collaboration and governance and how we pull those things together. So I said a little bit before, but my way of working would be working with you and understanding who you are, understanding your opinions and expressions of how you think that Canada should be, and then taking that to some percent of us didn't vote for this government. I also think we really need to restore some civility, and I'm going to talk more about that probably in my closing comments, but we need to be able to work with one another and respect one another in a much stronger way than we are right now. We've designed this whole campaign as if we're battling one another, and I think we need to change that.
And Jeff?
So I think in the age of social media and the decline of the local newspaper, what we're discovering is who can spin the story the best is the winner. Every single political party has claimed to have won every single one of the debates. That's just a sign of the times, I think. I think what we need to do is remember that this isn't all about winning. You don't win an election. You earn an election. You earn each and every single vote by sharing a vision and having people buy into a hopeful vision for the future of our country together. In terms of very specific things the Liberal platform is planning to do, call a commission to look at proportional representation or a different way of doing government within 6 months and have new legislation within 18 months to make sure that this is the last first past the post-election that silences the voice of so many. Provincially, the NDP has always advocated for proportional representation, and that was just until they were about to win a majority government. And now that is no longer the platform. So parties always...
Blaine?
Sure, thanks for the question, Diane. I know that we've worked very, very hard to try and do some of the common sense things when it comes to democratic reform. We were strong advocates at the beginning of having an elected Senate. Here in Alberta, all of our senators that the Prime Minister has appointed are elected senators, and you don't hear their names in the media for the wrong reason, which is an indication of the strength and integrity of that process. And we need to do that across the country. We've increased the number of voting days at advanced polls, making sure people who want to participate in our democracy have an opportunity to do so. We have fixed election days. This is the first time that we've known when the election is going to be because we passed legislation to that effect. We've added integrity to our voting process, making sure that people who actually vote can prove who they are and have identification and are registered to vote, and increasing the number of seats that we've got in places like Alberta. This makes sure that we, in our rep by pop system, that we have a rich tradition in, that Alberta actually is going to have the number of voices at the table in Parliament that it should have.
Earl?
Well, thank you very much. And Paul spoke about civility and the ability to be able to work together, and I think that's a critical thing in any democracy, is that people are prepared to listen to one another. I had the honor earlier this year to be at the Summit of the Americas to speak and address the Congress that was there. And what we were talking about was transparency in government. We were talking about openness. We were talking about election finances and fairness. And the reality is that Canada is considered a model. And so I'm extremely proud. I was proud to be able to present what we have done. And there were so many different countries from Central America and the Caribbean that were asking, how does Canada manage to make all of this work? And so I believe that we are very fortunate, and I think we should just be proud of what we do have.
And last for this question, Doug.
I agree we need to make parliamentary reform. I don't think we should have a majority government when more than 60% of the voters voted against them. I don't think we should have omnibus bills or prorogue parliament or limit debate or create wedge issues and use the politics of fear. I think we should win on public policy, not by hiring a heavyweight from Australia. Impose or generate mixed proportional representation, we'd abolish the Senate. I know that requires constitutional change. Repeal the Unfair Elections Act. Allow e-petitions, which would be, 21st century. Repeal Bill C-51 and no omnibus bills.
Hi there. My name's Jennifer. I have a question for you. What is your party's position on the current war on drugs and Canada's approach to alcohol and drug use?
First up is Paul.
Thanks, Jennifer. I will speak speak from my own perspective, and I think it's important that we recognize that drug use in our country has had serious side effects and that's not a joke, but I mean serious problems that has caused hurt to our families and to our communities and to our municipalities right across the country. I believe that we need to look at the evidence based on any drug studies and figure out what the policies would be that would support those families and people going through addictions and other spin-offs of that. So to me, it's not about just abolishing or penalizing people. It's about looking at the underlying root causes and looking at the evidence around how we might craft policy in order to address any social issues.
Okay, Jeff?
So I'll speak personally. If there's one issue that I'm really passionate about, and one thing I would do for the community of Red Deer and Central Alberta is try and get an addictions treatment center here. Just thinking that, of course, is on provincial jurisdiction, so it's a little bit of a complicated thing. But it's a well-known fact that the Liberal Party's platform is for legalization of marijuana. Currently, Canada has the highest rate of use of marijuana rate at 28% of youth who admit to using marijuana and other drugs. Our tough on crime thing is not working. Marijuana is easier to get than alcohol or tobacco. So the Liberal Party platform is to legalize it, control it, make sure kids know when they aren't getting access to drugs through illegal folks, make sure folks who are getting drugs are knowing what they're getting and not laced with something else, and it'll create a new tax revenue. It's an evidence-based policy. It's worked in Colorado. It's worked in Washington State, where they've seen crime go down, a new tax revenue, and kids who are safer, and criminals
Blaine.
Thanks, Ken. In my previous life as a law enforcement officer, I was horrified to see the effects that drugs had on communities. I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't bring forward policies that enable my children, your children, people in our community to get easier access to illicit drugs. So what we need to do is continue with responsible enforcement of these laws. As a former law enforcement officer, like I said, I can tell you that the current regime of legislation is difficult to enforce. There's no roadside test for marijuana when it comes to impaired driving. There are many issues that need to be ironed out before we move ahead with these dangerous policies. So I would be against increasing access to drugs for our young people, and I would also be in favor of ensuring that we have adequate resources to go to addictions, people that are suffering from these kinds of addictions. This is absolutely paramount in our communities to get people off these addictive drugs and get them back into a productive society.
Earl?
Well, thank you. As a school teacher for 34 years, I've seen too many young lives that have been affected by the use of drugs. So for people to minimize it and to suggest, I think we've found a great way to be able to normalize it is a mistake. I think the Chandra, Colorado experience and just see whether it is really doing the things that the proponents are suggesting. And again, when the discussion on alcohol, I've been proud to second a private member's bill that put those that kills or vehicular homicide, that are going to be dealt with extremely harshly.
Doug?
I'm a nurse and I work in psychiatry and addictions, and I've spent 40 years in dealing with problems like this, and it worries me that we talk about increasing or decreasing access. People who want it are going to get it anyway, and you can't legislate. I think we need to decriminalize. We need to use a harm reduction model to address it. And housing first is an important element. Yes, we need a detox center, but we need to approach it from a trans-theoretical model, and I can explain that to you later. And I worry, though, personally, about a generation of recreational drug users. And as far as minimum penalties that's what judges are for. We shouldn't be imposing judges tying their hands by telling them that they have to impose minimal penalties.
Last word, Chandra.
Something about she who speaks last. This issue is near and dear to my heart for a number of reasons. To answer your question directly, the war on drugs has failed, and that's what we have right now. drug and alcohol users, and that's not okay. We know that putting them in prison does not necessarily equate to them becoming better. We know that them getting off drugs does not equate to them becoming better. And so from a liberal standpoint, recognizing that mental health is part of our healthcare system is huge. And increasing funding for our social programming to start addressing things like treatment, housing, and evidence-based policy decision-making is really where I'm at on that one. Thanks, that's a great question.
Answer.
Hi, first, Blaine, you make a compelling argument for GMOs. Thank you. But more to not my real question. In 2008, as part of the insured mortgage purchase program, the Conservative government socialized up to $150 billion in private banks.
Sorry, can you step a little bit closer to the mic?
Okay.
Is there any way to turn up the volume on that mic?
Hear me now.
That's perfect.
Okay. In 2008, the Conservative government, as part of the insured mortgage purchase program, socialized up to $150 billion in private mortgage debt from the banks to the Canadian taxpayer. During this time, the Canadian banks made $27 billion in profit. Also during this time, as clearly stated in your Economic Action Plan 2013, you created a framework for what can best be described as Cyprus-style bail-ins should there be a liquidity crisis with our big banks, seizing people's deposits, basically. I'm wondering why you think the Canadian taxpayer should be responsible for these huge private debts, and why do you think that my savings should be taken by the banks if they don't have enough cash?
Order, okay, and so we will get, I guess, somebody who might be, opposed to that, speak first, okay? Is that okay with you? Okay, first up then is Jeff.
So I'm a church minister, not an economist. That's my first thing to say about this. But I do read the magazine The Economist every week quite religiously. Unintended. So I don't know the exact details of these sort of big bank things. My concern again is around the transparency that they're not being done in front of Canadians. You know, in 2008, we saw Canadian banks make record profits while the global economy was tanking. When the price of oil and gas tanked in 2008, Imperial Oil and Shell both had record profits that year. I'm deeply worried that our current government is favoring corporate interests over the interests of the people, with trickle-down economics that is proven not to work. So Harperonomics is proven to be a failure. We are the only G7 country that's just gone through a recession. It isn't working, and it's time for a better plan that puts Canadians first.
Blaine.
Thanks for the question, Nathan. The 2008 issue with the banks was all about liquidity, as you rightly pointed out. If we didn't do the things that we did in 2008 for the banking sector, Canada would have suffered far worse in that recession period. So that was absolutely vitally important to do. We've got the 8 straight years in a row AAA credit rating. We have the best, soundest economic fundamentals in the world. And the Canada Deposit Insurance Corporation, we've increased the amounts that you're protected for in your own private savings, your own private accounts. You've got a tax-free saving account that you can use, and you can invest in that. That particular vehicle will be fully protected. That's your money. And we'll continue to do what's right to protect not only the balance of making sure that we have strong economic fundamentals, but ensuring consumer protection as well. We have the responsibility as a government to make sure that our economy is going to continue to grow. When we have economic growth, we have the ability to pay for the social programs that we love so much.
Well, thank you for that question. And back in 2008, when people were talking to me about the ability or the being able to get credit, it had completely dried up. And what was happening is that people were losing properties, they were losing their jobs. All of these things were happening through no fault of their own. Now, all of the details, and I don't have the information that you have had presented, but I think that's a critical part of this. And I'd be happy to get more information and be able to talk to you about that.
Doug?
I won't pretend to know the details, Nathan, but I'll know, I'm going to talk about employment insurance. In 1997, 88% of people eligible for employment insurance got it. But by 1999, only 45% who'd been paying into it were found to be eligible. And in 2002, only 39% were. $57 billion in employment insurance premiums were moved out of employment insurance into general revenue to pay other expenses. And this year, we balanced our budget, apparently, by not paying money into veteran services, which was budgeted for, not paying money into social programs, and so we allegedly balanced this year's budget after 6 years of running deficits.
Chandra?
That's an excellent question. I think that the biggest comment that I want to make is, in a perfect world, everyone should be liable for their own debt. And so as a Canadian taxpayer, I don't feel as though I should be liable for a bank's debts. With respect to some of the comments made by my fellow candidates, I really feel the need to point out that when we talk about something like liability for liquidity, it's important that we look at people's ability to repay their debts. And right now we are living through a government that has the worst job creation record in the past 80 years. And also one that's run sequential deficits. We have the largest household debt ratio that we've ever seen as a country, and that makes me worried when we talk about things like, is the individual taxpayer going to become liable for when the banks default? The reality is, as a Canadian, can you pay your bills, and do you know that your job's going to be there tomorrow? And I think focusing on the election is electing the government that you think will provide you with job opportunities that enable you to meet your obligations. Thanks.
I'll be very brief. I will not bullshit my way through this question. Except I will say that our investments need to be protected with no exceptions.
Points for the briefest answer. Over this mic.
Hi, my name is Andrew. I'd like to ask the question specifically to the Liberal candidates. On September 8th, in an interview with CBC, Justin Trudeau, I quote, said, "A large percentage of small businesses are actually just ways for wealthier Canadians to save on their taxes. When the Liberal Party is so for supporting the middle class, and many small business owners are middle class, couldn't you consider this contradictory, also keeping in mind that you take responsibility for what your leader says?"
Was specifically asked from the Liberal candidates. I'll ask them first, then I'll ask the other answer back. Over to Jeff.
So I'll use the statistic from the province of Ontario. 1 year there was something like 6,000 medical doctors who consider themselves to be a private business. The rules changed, and the next year there was 10 times as many. 60,000 doctors who made themselves a small business, largely appointed their spouses as shareholders, and have used it as a tax loophole ever since, and a tax dodging thing. The statistic is upwards of 16% of small businesses are tax shelters and not real small businesses. So yes, I stand by what Justin Trudeau says. And I'm going to ask the richest Canadians to pay a little bit more to pay their fair share rather than dodge taxes. We will balance the budget by making rich corporations pay their fair share, by making the rich Canadians pay their fair share, and going after Canadians who are cheating by the tax, and not charities like the United Church of Canada who can be exploited twice by the Canadian Revenue Agency as a bullying tactic. The CRA is an independent organization that needs to hold Canadian taxpayers to account and not be used as a bullying tactic of Stephen Harper against 112 charities, each of which were proven innocent when they were charged by CRA and investigated.
Applause are good. Catcalls and yelling and screaming are not good. Remember when we started this out? We're going to respect everybody in their comments and their opinions. If you have an issue with the candidate, do it afterwards. Not while I'm moderating this forum. Chandra.
Hopefully not in the parking lot afterwards. Hi, Andrew. Good to meet you again. Thank you for asking me this question twice this week. I know. Now I feel prepped for it. I do believe that what Jeff said, it hit the mark for me. The comment was made with respect to people or are individuals who choose to use small businesses as tax shelters. The comment was not aimed at legitimate small businesses that are struggling to make their way in our economy. Do I stand by the comment? I think again, I can say that sound bites are really easy to take, and quotes are super easy to take out of context. But again, I stick by the thought process that there are a number of small businesses that do use this to their advantage to shelter income, and that I believe is what the leader is getting at in speaking to it. And I have to be supportive of that. So thank you.
Anybody on this side of the table want to speak to that? Okay. Go ahead, Paul.
I will just say, as a small business owner, and I have a number of part-time employees, that I can definitely tell you we are not a tax shelter. I think it's really important that we invest in small business as a country. Small business is the backbone of our country, and without small businesses, we wouldn't succeed. And I think if we don't find a way to protect them so that they're not gobbled up by bigger and bigger corporations, there's a problem there. As you know, I think all of the parties intend to reduce small business tax, which I think is a good idea, and that will help small businesses succeed. For me, though, we need to find ways to help small businesses innovate and find new markets, and that is a key. We can't always just depend on what we've always done. We've got to look at new ways to encourage businesses to develop and grow our economy.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and of course, for someone again involved in a small business, and as Paul is, it is an insult to hear that type of talk. The percentage of people that are employed in Canada because of small business is staggering, in the 90% range, and so I think it's critical for us to recognize how important it is when we talk about our new trade deals and TPP. It is the small business people that are the ones that are excited about this. It's an opportunity for them. They are so much more flexible and so much quicker on their feet to be able to move into these areas. So small businesses should be supported, and we will continue to do so.
The word small business was mentioned in the question, but the question wasn't about small business, it's about tax fraud. It's about somebody in Vancouver with $26 million who puts it in the Isle of Man and gets an accountant to give them $500,000 every 6 months tax-free as a gift. That's tax fraud. The accountant should be charged, and the CRA should go after the person. There are legitimate business expenses, and there is tax fraud. Go after the fraudulent ones.
Thanks, Andrew, for the question. I said earlier, I'm very proud to be running under a Conservative banner led by Stephen Harper, because I do not have to defend carelessly made comments. And this is another example of carelessly made comments that has pitted our country, people in our country against each other. Yet we're the ones that get constantly accused of pitting people against each other. This is ridiculous. We've cut taxes for everyone because we understand that large businesses have a role to play. We understand that small businesses have a role to play as a service provider to a large business or as a retailer to general consumers. We cut taxes for families, and we cut the GST. When your tax percentages go down, your economy grows, and the tax revenues go up. This is good public policy, and it shouldn't be a wedge issue.
Sir?
As I'm sure you guys are aware, Canada is without a healthcare report right now.
Can I stop you, Frank, and tell us who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Matt.
Thanks.
Prime Minister Harper has not met with the provinces to renew it, and I have had the opportunity to see the intellectual property chapter of the TPP. It allows for surgical procedures to be patented and allows drug
mentioned earlier, and my wife works in the healthcare system here in the province. If we get our economic fundamentals right, if we answer the big questions right, our economy will be strong and solid, and we as Canadians will be able to depend on the programs and services that we currently receive. In 2005, when the Conservative Party and Prime Minister Stephen Harper became the government of Canada, or the head of the government of Canada, then what we saw at that particular time was some of the lowest transfers. As a matter of fact, the budgets were balanced on cuts to transfers to provinces for education, for healthcare. None of that has actually happened. We've been able to grow our economy so well, even through these hard times, that we have actually increased the amount of money that's coming to the provinces for healthcare, all the way through the life of the accord, and now indexed to the inflation. This means that it's going to be sustainable. As our country grows, so do the healthcare transfers grow, so that each and one of us can benefit from a publicly funded healthcare system.
Next.
Well, thank you very much. And as I mentioned earlier, during the 90s, I was involved with the Elmer Hospital Board as a board member and chairman. When we take a look at the things that happened at that time, that 30% cut from the federal Liberal government that just completely decimated the things that were happening here in Alberta. Now, Ralph got blamed, but we know where the dollars were cut from. And so when we take a look at the situation that has occurred, we have increased funding by 70% since we've come to office. The other thing that's happened is there's been an extra $1 billion that has come to Alberta because of the changes and the taking care of the issues that had happened when that healthcare accord was written. The other thing is you talked about medicine. We have medical student loan forgiveness now for doctors and nurses when they go into rural areas, and I think this is another critical part.
Time.
Doug.
Yes, we would sign the new healthcare accord with the provinces. It's in our platform. We created positions for 7,000 new health professionals, including doctors. And why wouldn't we fund the education for rural students to be doctors in rural communities rather than hiring people from South Africa and taking away their doctors? We planned a national pharmacare program, 41,000 home care spots for seniors, mental health program for youth, a national senior strategy. The first baby boomers turned 65 in 2011, and we don't have a national senior strategy. And we haven't had a First Ministers Conference on seniors. Affordable housing is an important element as well as the healthcare accord.
Chandra.
I believe your question was, how will I protect healthcare in Canada? And so that's what I'm going to speak to. Like a rabid wild animal, this is actually one of my key issues in deciding to run. I am a healthcare professional, and from that perspective, I've seen the gap in the system. We have people who are unable to get care in their communities. We have people who are getting inappropriate care in and outside of their communities, and that's just unacceptable. I do believe the Liberal position is to renegotiate the health accord. One of the promises that we're making is that we will pull the provinces and territories together to discuss healthcare and negotiate a new accord with appropriate funding measures in it. And so that speaks to the No Health Accord. I can't help but throw down one of the things that really made me start paying attention to this election was the dissolution of the Health Council of Canada, which is there for us, the people, to ensure that things like the Health Accord and things like the federal government are acting in our best interest in the delivery of health care.
Time.
Thank you very much. I would be remiss if I didn't remind the audience where healthcare came from. Tommy Douglas, 17 years, 17,000 budgets in a row into the healthcare system in the country. So I think it's really important that we protect our healthcare. The speaker wanted details, and it was a how question. And sometimes you can't get into the details of how you would do it, except to know that we would protect it. We would want to make sure we protect the industry. We would want to introduce universal pharmacare for the country. These things are really important.
And Another question, Jeff?
So it's Canadian healthcare is one of our greatest assets as a country. It's one of the things of great pride. We are the only country that of the developed world that has a healthcare system but doesn't have a pharmacare system. That's a new concept that our country, and I know the Liberal Party, is talking about a great deal. I've talked with a lot of the other candidates across the country. The Canadian Medical Association has talked about how spending $1 on a pharmacare program will save $2.5 in healthcare costs further down the road. The Liberal Party has not yet committed to doing a pharmacare program, but it's certainly got our attention. One of the things we are committed to do is reinvesting $3 billion in the healthcare system in the next 4 years to make a strategy on home care. In my own family, my father's in a nursing home, and home care was a lifesaver for my family. It saved the government thousands of dollars by not having him in long-term care, but by keeping him at home with appropriate services. So the Liberal platform is to invest in home care, mental health care, which is an absolutely essential thing, and to get a new health court degree with $3 billion.
Yes, hello, my name is Shirley, and I'm a mother of 4 children. As it was mentioned, many families in Central Alberta are oil field families, and given that there's been about 40,000 layoffs in the oil and energy sector, and I know people who have not worked since January, and also knowing that there are many young students or new grads from university who are unable to find jobs, and very disheartening to see people with professional degrees having to work at Starbucks or landscaping or whatever. So I am just wondering, Mr. Harris, I believe in your opening remarks you said something about that NDP was not anti-oil. And so I am hoping that you candidates can give me concrete ways that you will work with the oil and energy sector in Alberta and help these people get jobs. I don't want to just hear the word job creation. I want to hear how you are actually planning to work with the oil and energy sector to have responsible oil and to come up with jobs for these people who are trying to raise their families here in Central Alberta.
Earl.
Well, thank you very much, and of course the oil and gas industry has really taken a severe downturn with the price of oil. We've our oil and gas sectors have been exactly. Oh, sorry. Right. But the oil and gas industry has really taken a hit here, and of course it's important that we defend them in so many different ways. And I guess really when I look at the concerns and the issues that we have. We have so many opportunities, but no one is paying attention to sort of the main cause of the issues that we have, and that is us not being able to move our product to Tidewater so that we can be getting world prices for that.
Doug?
World prices in oil have dropped 60% in the last year. We don't control world prices. Getting it to Tidewater won't raise that price. And people aren't unemployed because the provincial government raised corporate taxes from 10% to 2%. They're unemployed because of the 60% decline in the price of oil per barrel. What we need to do is find other ways to turn that oil into jobs by value adding. ME Global takes oil at $40 a barrel and turns it into ethylene glycol at $40 a gallon. Those are the kinds of things that would help. I think we need to take the current technology that we have in drilling and drill for heat instead of oil for heat, and create geothermal electrical generators. There are 88 of them in the world and none in Canada. Those are the kinds of things that we need.
Chandra.
That is a great question, and I'm just going to acknowledge that I don't think the people that we're referring to who are jobless right now are alone at all. In terms of what I've heard from people in my riding is concern about job security and what they're going to do next because they're still waiting for that phone call to go back to work. So to speak directly to your question, I think this is kind of a 3 and gas, I do believe that I'm going to say something like, I agree with Earl. Our products need to be able to get to market quicker, and that's why we're in favor of things like creating pipelines with environmental accountability. Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you. I first want to say that most of my part-time staff work as baristas, and my partner is a landscape gardener. Those are good careers as well. We can't forget them. 100 years ago, we did not have oil. Our economy wasn't driven by oil. 100 years from now, it will be driven by something else. Perhaps oil and gas will be part of that mix. In the in-between stages, we need to find ways to support all sectors. And how do we gracefully and gently transition from one to another? These are innovation strategies that we've got to look at. I think if we put dollars specifically out there to companies that are suffering and look at ways that they can morph their technology into new fields, that would really help us, as well as supporting all the other industries that exist in Alberta, not just oil and gas.
Jeff?
So just a short while ago, there was an article in the Edmonton Journal called Justin Trudeau, the surprise advocate for Alberta's oil and gas industry. That was hot off the heels of another article called Stephen Hart for Oil and Gas's Worst Enemy. Alberta Oil and Gas magazine did an editorial a few months ago that said, do not vote Stephen Harper on oil and gas. You want to vote for him on terrorism? Go ahead. You want to vote on him for being tough on crime? Go ahead. But he has boondoggled the oil and gas industry, and the failure of the Keystone XL pipeline is an example of that. It is the responsibility of a government to get oil and gas to market, and if you use that as a measuring stick, Stephen Harper has failed horribly. We need to take the environment and the economy seriously, not see them as enemies, and not shake our heads, and not see who can yell the loudest, but come together as Canadians. Because when you're sitting here concerned about the environment, concerned about the oil and gas industry, you care about this country, right? You care. That's why you asked that question. You care about this country. The folks over here who are shaking their heads and the other ones who are nodding understand that we have to come together. We are not the oil and gas industry and environmentalists are not enemies. They have to work together making solutions.
Last word on this question goes to Blaine.
Thank you very much, Shirley, for that question. I've always stated that West is best, East is great, and Keystone is good as well. We know very well the economic benefits of having a strong oil and gas sector here in Alberta, and I'm startled that Doug doesn't seem to understand the difference between international price and North American price of oil. Even when, this is frightening because he ran for the provincial NDP and they're the ones that are in charge of our economy right now. So what we see is in that price differential is billions of dollars of lost royalty opportunities. If I wanted to empower my government here in the province of Alberta to have more money from the resources that we have, the best thing I can do is ensure the pipelines get built to the west coast and the east coast, that the international market price and the North American market price come closer together, ensuring that Albertans get the fair value for the energy that we have here.
Bonjour, mon nom est Chad et je suis à l'antenne francophone. The Liberals and the NDP have both talked about they're going to end the politics of division. But in this election, they are the only ones that are talking about and arguing about the technicalities of actually dividing up this country. My Canada includes Quebec. So as representatives of the Liberal Party and of the NDP Party, how can you advocate that you're going to end the politics of division when you are arguing about actually splitting up the country and how that will work?
Okay, first up on answers for this is Doug.
I have a whole book full of notes. I read lots of articles, but I'm not aware that Thomas Mulcair has a plan to divide the country. I'm aware our support in Quebec isn't as strong as it was with Jack Layton, but I'm not aware that we have a plan to divide the country. I feel ill-equipped to answer your question.
Okay, over to Chandra.
My Canada includes Quebec as well. I'm old enough / young enough to remember the referendum last go around, and the fact that we're even talking about this again just blows my mind. In terms of, to speak to my party, to the best of my knowledge, Mr. Trudeau's statements surrounding Quebec have been that of being inclusive of Quebec and of the ridiculousness of talking about sovereignty for Quebec. So thanks for the question.
And Paul.
I will just say briefly that the same as the other candidates is saying that my candidate includes Quebec as well. I'm not aware of any talks that we're having to divide the country.
And Jeff. Sorry.
Donc, merci pour votre question, Chad. Je vais parler un petit peu en français et un petit peu en anglais. Donc, la Cour suprême du Canada a fait une décision qu'il faut avoir un clair majoritaire pour la séparation. So the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that there must be a clear separation, a clear mandate for separation to happen that is far more than 50 plus 1. That was a Supreme Court of Canada decision to make sure that Canada stays together. Justin Trudeau has very vocally advocated that we need to keep this country united as a federalist person himself from Quebec, and as a man who's running to be the Prime Minister of our country. That's the role of a leader, to include people and to make it difficult or impossible for Quebec to separate unless that clear majority is there.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Chad, for the question. Look, we see again the rhetoric and actually who is playing divisive politics with this. If you remember the debate, the French language debate, Stephen Harper actually asked the moderator to get off this particular question. It does not serve Canada's interests at all to have Thomas Mulcair and Justin Trudeau bickering about how we're going to break up Canada. We should be pulling together as a nation, getting behind Stephen Harper. And international market access, in the fight against terror, and so on. We have a great international leader and a great national leader in Stephen Harper, and we need to be getting behind him.
No way.
Great. This Mike.
I'm Guam. I, along with a lot of people, aren't happy with dividing the victory into the ridings. So my question is to the North people. If elected, where are you going to locate your constituency office? Lacombe or Black Falls? Anoka. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to start up.
Just to the north.
Yeah, just got to check my news up in first in order here. Hold on. Jeff, you're up first.
There's very strict regulations about offices for people, and Earl and Blaine will know this. Those decisions aren't necessarily up to the candidates alone. There's a certain amount of frontage that is only allowed. You can't have this many windows. It is very strictly controlled. I'm a citizen of Red Deer, and I'm really thrilled to be part of a riding that really represents a cross-section of Canada that's both rural and urban, that's oil and gas, that's agriculture, that's service, that has immigrants, Indigenous people, that's a real example of Canada. So likely, as a Red Deer citizen, maybe in the Red Deer area, but I also want to make sure that those rural folks have a chance and have an office that meets their needs. So why not do two offices? That's a possibility as well. But again, it's not up to candidates where they set their office.
Okay, Blaine.
Thanks, Frank. I'm not sure that this question serves a terribly useful purpose, but I do understand the nature in which it's intended. I've been the Member of Parliament for Wetaskiwin for the last 10 years. My office is currently in Pinoka. If I do and am successful in winning the election for Red Deer Lacombe, I will not have any extra funding because the Pinoka office is currently in the boundaries of the Red Deer Lacombe constituency. However, that being said, the most important thing that I can do on your behalf is make sure that I am accessible and hire top quality staff to service the needs of the people of Red Deer Lacombe. That's the best thing that I can do as a representative. Most of the people that contact my office contact by email, contact by phone, contact by some other method. Very few people actually walk into an MP's office. So I will do my best. I can't commit to where an office would actually be, but I'll make sure it's handicap accessible and that my number and the contact information for my office will be broadly available to everybody in the constituency, and I'll hire the best staff I possibly can to serve your needs.
This might come as a surprise to you, but I haven't started looking for real estate in Ottawa, nor have I negotiated rental space for office. I suspect there are some very clear guidelines as to where your office can be and where how much you can spend on it. The challenge would be a large portion, probably about half of the residents of the constituency lie in the north part of Red Deer, but it goes all the way up to Massachusetts and includes 9,000 residents there. So it would have to be easily accessible, and probably central, so, you know, maybe Lacombe.
Sure.
All right. My name is Pedro Rosales. Here's a question for everybody in the panel up there. I hear a lot of talk about the opinions that you guys are going to go and listen to my opinion or anybody else's opinion. In my life, I've come to terms to accept that my opinion in some topics is completely irrelevant because I don't have the knowledge. So my question here, and building to that, when there are facts and evidence is completely against my opinion, when I have to let my opinion go. So my question to you, and to you, not to your prime minister that you're supporting, or to your candidate, is to you. My question to you is, how will you avoid the unfounded bias that you may have to get in the way of make well-informed, evidence-based decisions?
Chandra.
Well, as a clinician, I am well attuned to making objective decisions. I am able to examine issues from all angles and remove myself to make decisions in the best interest of the people that I'm treating. And so I'm feeling pretty confident that those skills are transferable. If not, I have a very vocal 11-year-old boy who's very good at holding me accountable for when I'm becoming maybe a little too ego-driven or perhaps moody. And I do believe that he keeps me in check quite a bit, and a large part of what motivates me to run is ensuring that I do a good job for our riding, so he has a great place to live.
Next up is Paul.
Thank you very much. And this is actually a question that's really important to me, and I could probably speak to you for hours, but I suspect I'll lose all of you, and I'll go home. To me, to really understand a particular person or position, I need to understand your narrative, your story, how you landed on your opinion. It's not good enough for me to just know your opinion, because anybody can have an opinion. I need to know how you arrived there. And I think as we work together as people, if we can understand each other's stories, we'll get to a better solution about how we might deal with any particular issue. So that would be how I would approach it. It would be individually, it would be on a narrative basis.
Sorry for that, Lauren, interrupting you. That just lets me know that we have time for only one more question. Good. Jeff.
So thanks for your question, Pedro. I come from a science background. I did research in Parkinson's disease in a laboratory for a while. And the scientific method is all about making a theory, taking the evidence that you find, and then fixing the theory to meet the evidence, and it's a continual cycle. It's not a decision is made and is set in stone. We should always be progressing, always be moving, always be changing our opinions, and always be moving forward together as a country. And that's, to me, what politics is all about. You know, if you look back in recent Canadian history, 10 years ago, most Canadians were against same-gender marriage. The vast majority of Canadians were against same-gender marriage. But the Supreme Court of Canada spoke, and our Prime Minister at the time, Jean Chrétien, a devout Catholic, voted and chose to allow same-gendered marriage in Canada, going against his religious tradition, going against the polls, and doing what is right. So the job of a politician is to represent the people in their riding and represent their voices sometimes. Sometimes it's about their conscience, and sometimes it's to do it.
Time. I get this angelic face that looks at me and says, I'm sorry. Grandkids, and I got kids, I know it. Okay, Blaine, you're up.
Thanks, Pedro. That's been my favorite question of the night. My job as a member of Parliament for the last 10 years isn't to go to Ottawa and do what Blaine thinks is best. Every time I'm presented with an issue that I have to make a decision on behalf of the people I represent, I ask myself, what would everybody back home want me to do in this situation? Knowing what they know, and if they knew some of the information that I am privy to as a member of Parliament, that we would all be privy to as members of Parliament. And that's how I've been able to conduct myself. And I'm very proud to be running for a party that allows me to vote the moral grounds. And I've been able to do that. I have voted against the party's recommendation or the government's recommendation several times because I knew that back home, the folks who sent me to Ottawa as their representative would want me to vote that way. And I can continue to do that as a member of a Conservative caucus.
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is it's a House of Commons. It's everybody's house. We're all common folks that have gone there. We've had different types of experiences that we are able to bring, but the reality is that we represent the people that put us into that office. And I think it's so critical. You need to talk to people. You need to make sure that if people are going and being somewhat critical, that you're listening to why it is that they have come up and formed those opinions. And the reality is that when you decide that you are modest enough that you will listen and that you will be part of the conversation, then you'll be able to make good decisions.
And last comments, Doug.
In the 2 master's degrees I completed, I learned to value research as the pursuit of truth. And so that guides my decision making because I don't just read what supports my political ideology. I read Nicky Farouk, I read Marsden, but I also read Ezra Levant. I want to talk to you, what would guide my decision making is Martin Luther King. He asked the question, this is part of the speech he gave in Stockholm when he got his Nobel Peace Prize. Cowardice asked the question, is it safe? Expediency asked the question, is it politic? Vanity asked the question, is it popular? But conscience asked the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. One must take it because it's right. I use this to guide my decision making.
You have the last question.
Scary. My name's Pat Marcellus, and while I would like to ask questions about transparency and 170 times when the government did not respond to Freedom of Information requests, my question is actually, thank you, about something that happened in this community during the month of June when 1,700 unfinished moccasin tops were on display at the Red Deer Museum in protest and in memoriam of 1,700 Aboriginal women and children who have gone murdered and missing in this country. And while I don't expect to get transparency in all of these answers, I would very much like to know what your parties intend to do about this issue.
Thank you very much for the question. I'm sorry, it's emotional for me to even hear the question. It is very important to the party that we would call an immediate inquiry into the murdered and missing Indigenous women in the country. But beyond that, we need to figure out a way that we can collaborate and work together so that we become one people. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. It should be that we're all together, that we care about humanity and we care about one another. It's important to me that we do that, and I think a number of the things in the Truth and Reconciliation report we can work with municipalities on, and we can try to forward the thinking there. Beyond that, we need to work and really understand what this country.
Jeff, last chance to stay on time.
missing in this community of Red Deer. This isn't an issue from somewhere else in the country. This is a Central Alberta issue. We have missing and murdered women in this city. There's a dumping ground south of Edmonton. There's a huge problem, and we need to answer it. This isn't just something about us and them. This is something about each and every single one of us as Canadians that we need to address desperately.
Thank you very much for that question, Pat. It's a very, very, very tough question. The party that I am with and the Prime Minister and the government has taken the tack that based on all the studies and inquiries that have already been done, whether it's RCMP reports or other third-party organizations that have reported on this, we know that Aboriginal women go missing in the hands of people that they know just like anybody else as a missing person in this country. So what we need to do is use those resources instead that would be applied in the commission if one was to happen. We can take those resources and actually address the socioeconomic problems and the enforcement issues, the lack of enforcement issues in some of these cases. We use those resources that way to bring justice to those who have already been victimized, but also bring a sense of hope to those that might be a victim sometime in the future by addressing some of those socioeconomic problems.
Earl. I've been on Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development as a committee member for a number of years, and I've gone through the 40 studies that we have had. I've also read all of the 94 recommendations in the Truth and Reconciliation Inquiry, and I also know what the framework is for a national inquiry. And believe me, what we have done is we've made a point of speaking with Aboriginal leaders throughout this country, and we have taken steps in so many different areas. And then when it comes to the justice aspect of it, as Blaine has just described, we want to make sure that we are able to put dollars into communities so that they can best look after those issues that they tell us are most important.
Doug. Thank you, Pat, for that important question. Yes, we would absolutely launch a national inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women. Yes, we would adopt the United Nations Declarations of Rights for Indigenous people. Yes, we would act on the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation hearings, improve infrastructure on reserves. I would be advocating for a hospital at Masquachis. 9,000 people living there, and they don't have a hospital. And education as a means to empower Indigenous people. I had the pleasure of being in Masquachis on Monday for the National Orange Shirt Day, and it's in honor of Melanie Moosetail Bertrand, how she overcame her horrific residential school environment and her experience over 12 years. And I am anxiously looking to serve those unfortunate, underprivileged people. And last word on the last question, Chandra.
He who speaks last. The fact that we have people in the audience tonight that are smirking and shaking their heads as people address this question is exactly why this question is being asked, in my opinion. Jeff said it well. Our party has committed to immediately calling an inquiry about the missing and murdered Indigenous women. I do think that it's relevant to point out, I'm originally from Thunder Bay, Ontario, which is in northwestern Ontario, and this is where the vast majority of these 1,700 women have gone missing from. Some of them are my relatives. Some of them are my friends that I went to high school with, and so I don't think it's relevant to say things like this isn't high on our radar and that this is not important to us or that it is too onerous of a task to undertake. Yeah, and I really can't beat Jeff's response, but I thought I'd point out the inappropriateness of the head shaking and smirking tonight. It's an important issue. Thank you.
That brings the question part of this evening to an end. Okay? By my calculation, we'll make it through 13 questions. Thank you to members of the audience that asked the question and stayed on point, and thank you to members of the panel that answered the questions and stayed on point and on time.
me, my time starts now. I would like to thank, first of all of my counterparts here for coming tonight and being part of this committee. I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting, and Ken, you've done an admirable job as moderator. But most of all, I would like to thank you for coming out and taking part in the democratic process by asking hard-hitting questions. The questions that you've asked tonight have given all of us an opportunity to think about the issues that are important as we move forward and try to be the representative for our respective ridings. I've had the privilege of being a member of Parliament for 10 years. You will find me active in my community. You will find me at various events. You will be able to address me or to talk to me. I'm very approachable and very engageable on all of these particular issues. I believe we have a very, very important question in this election. The most important question that we can ask ourselves is, who is going to be the best steward of our economy? And I'm not saying that this is the only question, but if we get this question right, and we trust our economy in the hands of a leader like Stephen Harper, then we will have the security going forward, the economic security, to make decisions on the other questions that we've asked tonight, and we will have the resources to provide for our social programs, health programs, all of the things that we have to be Canadian. Thank you. I appreciate your support.
Next up is Earl. As a representative for this community for the last 7 years, I've been extremely proud of what we have been able to do together. I know that I've delivered through our federal government $120 million in investment to this riding, so over $75 million to the city of Red Deer alone. And I know that it's been appreciated. As a matter of fact, I'd like to read you a quote from a staunch supporter of our Conservative budgets, where the quote says, "I'm generally very pleased with its content. I appreciate that it's fiscally conservative. It provides excellent long-term infrastructure, predictable funding for municipalities, and important initiatives to businesses for training and manufacturing. These will help improve the economy. The commitment to eliminate the budget deficit by 2015 is a good thing." And thank you very much, Paul, for that particular quote. Seriously, Paul and I are good friends, so I mean, but what I do want to say, folks, is that I appreciate the work that all of our fellow candidates have done, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity, and I do ask for support.
Doug, you're up.
I've been in lots of forums, and I've never been in a forum where the speaker couldn't finish the sentence that they were on. I found that annoying all night. I'd like to tell you why I'm a good MP. I have a grandson, 2 years old. He has a book that's called The Day the Crayons Quit. And in it, it talks about the black crayon who got mad because he only got to do the outlines. And it talked about the red crayon because he got mad because he got painted with everything. And the brown crayon, he was mad for a different reason. But the white crayon was mad because he never got used. He never showed up on the white page. He was invisible. He was innocuous. And I would suggest that some of the MPs in our parliament are like white crayons. I will not be a white crayon. Those of you who know me will know I am outspoken, wise, I listen, and I would be a great representative on your behalf.
I'm almost scared to interrupt you. Chandra, you're up.
I would really like to stand up for this, but I'm not going to. Today, I see a government that muzzles federal scientists, climatologists, and even attempts to control our national media. It's crippled our arts and continues to attack our multiculturalism. It ignores our Indigenous peoples and almost makes fun of them. It has made decisions in spite of Canadians, proroguing Parliament not once, but twice. The Harper government is the only government in Canadian history to be held in contempt of Parliament. I want to remind you that this is our government that I'm talking about, that they work for us. As a Canadian, I find a deceptive, divisive, fear-based approach to governing my country offensive. I'm here tonight because I'm over it, and I hope you are too. We have two parties that are promising a balanced budget. I'm asking you, what else are you prepared to give up? I'm not in this to be a career politician, nor to advance my own agenda. I'm an ordinary, hard-working Canadian with a family to support. I really believe that real people in our government will create real change in our government, and I think that we can do better than what we've been doing. The best time for us to begin doing better is now. Thank you.
And next up is Paul.
Thank you very much, folks. When I accepted the invitation to run. I entered this with the idea that we needed to change the conversation, that the politics that we were all engaged in was an us and them politics. Our media has talked about battleground Red Deer, battleground Quebec, et cetera, and it's framed us as if we're in opposition to one another. I wonder what would happen if we thought of Canada in this discussion as the great Canadian governance discussion. What is going to take us into the future together? I have said, and I often will say it, that every conversation that we have changes the future in some way. And so as voters and as friends and as colleagues, I would encourage you to think about those conversations that you're having and how we might elevate this discussion so that we really can get back to governing a country that is worth governing. This is a great opportunity that we have, and let's take the opportunity to learn about the issues, to really understand one another, and to vote.
We're in the evening, Jeff.
I'll try not to mess it up. So I think people will look back at the 2015 election as a historic one, a real turning point in the history of our country. I'm angry, like a lot of Canadians are angry, but I'm also deeply hopeful. I know that Canada is a great country, but I also know we can be a greater country, that we can come together, that we can make a more prosperous country for everyone by investing in our infrastructure, kickstarting the economy, getting people working again, by getting pipelines built, by addressing the challenges of missing and murdered Indigenous women, by finding all levels of government working together, municipal, provincial, and federal, for the people, by the people. I believe we can do democratic reform and make sure all voices are heard. I believe that we are up to this challenge as a country if we come together and put the partisan politics aside. At the end of the day, we are all on Team Canada, and we need to work more constructively and not have planted questions and divisive politics and head shaking and boos. We need to work together as Canadian people.
For all your candidates, I think that you have to balance. For those of you that don't know, chambers of commerce around the province of Alberta are definitely nonpartisan. So I feel it is my job to interrupt everybody equally when they vote as time goes. Just also consider that it's also education for when you get to the House of Commons and the Speaker cuts you off after a minute and a half. So just thought I'd toss it out there. Anyway, thank you for coming. This has been organized by the Red Deer and District Chamber of Commerce. Are any of the staff still in the room? Please stand up and give us a wave. Together, obviously, it would not have been a success without the candidates and also with you concerned voters. One last message.